Hey, hey. Hello. Thank you guys for joining today. This is going to be a lot of fun. Let me know if you can hear me okay in the comments underneath. As I explained on Locals and on Facebook and on Twitter before we started, if you want to ask me a question to answer live on air, don't submit it in the YouTube comment section. Go over to Locals and become a supporter. Get VIP access to be able to ask me questions live on air. You have plenty of time to go ahead and do that now because we're going to be answering questions for at least 30 minutes. So go ahead and do that now. We will get started with the questions in just a moment, but I want to let everyone have a chance to get logged on and ready for these questions. So we'll watch and see how many people are logging on. So first of all, have you guys dealt with any of the gas shortages? Have you had that in your communities yet? We haven't here, but to be honest, I'm not sure I would know because my husband always fills up my gas tank. But that seems to be a pretty big story. President Biden dismissed that as just that pipeline hijack as just a private sector issue when it's actually impacting all of us. Let me know if you've experienced, though. I feel like that's something that my friends and I have texted each other a lot about the last couple days, asking if your gas tank, if you were able to fill it up or if the gas station was out of gas near you. So where I live, they do not have an outdoor mask mandate anymore, but I was walking in downtown yesterday with my sister and my baby. And literally, even though the CDC does not recommend that you wear masks outside anymore, even though the state and the city have no outdoor mask mandates, every single person that we saw was wearing a mask outside, socially distanced, just walking along the street, walking along the boardwalk, right? People were still wearing masks. I do not get that. So insane. And looking at us like we were crazy and endangering other people because we didn't have masks on outside. Super nuts. Super nuts. What stories do you guys see for today that interest you? We of course have what's going on in Israel. And I think that it's pretty obvious what's happening in Israel. Israel is the good guy and Hamas is the bad guy. And you can tell the difference because you can say, well, which side uses children as human shields and which side provides medical care for the terrorists that are trying to kill them? It's not that complicated. If you care about the lives of Palestinian children, then you will condemn Hamas, condemn the Palestinian Authority who use these children as human shields. Also, guys, go ahead and head over to joinlizwheeler.com/locals. That's how you submit a question. I forgot to mention the URL before. joinlizwheeler.com/locals. And drop your comment on the thread that says live stream Q&A. Submit your questions here. It's pretty self-explanatory. Okay. I think we are about ready to start answering these questions. Lots of good questions on here, and I'm looking at them as they're coming in as well. So let's go ahead and get started. We will start with a question from, well, this person doesn't have a name on here. It's just a username. That's all right. He has an eagle as his profile picture. His name is Moontide99. He says, do you think Biden's weak foreign policy and lack of support for close U.S. allies has contributed to the recent aggressive actions of the Palestinian, Iranian, Russian, and Chinese military? Obviously. Of course it did. I mean, look at the difference in how our adversaries or these hostile nations acted under the Trump administration versus how they're acting under the Biden administration. Of course, they can smell Biden's weakness. It's terrible. And by the way, Hamas attacking Israel right now, if you look at the rockets that they're using, they're funded by Iran. And Iran is acting this way because Biden is saying, hey, we're going to lift sanctions on you, which means you're going to be able to make an incredible amount of money. What do they spend the money on? Not their people. They don't give the money back to the people. No. They give it to their military force and their government who use it to fund terrorism. Again, in this case, fund terrorism committed by Hamas against the Israelis. So you can plainly see the consequences of the very weak Biden foreign policy. And that's just one example. That's not even talking about Russia. That's not even talking about China. But I mean, we see examples of the Chinese flexing their muscles as well. Look at what happened at that Alaska summit. They were blatantly disrespectful to the United States, blatantly disregarded international norms, blatantly challenged the Biden administration, who was just like, oh, I'm sorry. They didn't actually stand up with strength and say, hey, we're the leader of the free world. This is how it works. Biden's foreign policy is putting the entire world in danger. So that's my answer to that question. Next question. What are your thoughts on the current state of sex education? Oh, I'm glad you asked this question. My thoughts on the current state of sex education is that the public school system has no place educating or indoctrinating students with sex education. I mean, this is true even if it were benign sex education, just this is how you make a baby, these are the different parts of the body. Still not the place of the government to indoctrinate students on that. That's the place of the parents. If the parents have neglected that, that's the place of, community or church or whatever informs your philosophy on this, meaning your religion. It's not the place of the government. So that's number one. It's not their place to begin with. And the reason it's not their place is because it gets out of hand so quickly. And we see it getting out of hand right now. I mean, students are being taught that in kindergarten that they can be a boy or a girl depending on how they feel, that gender is, not related to biology. It's just innately, do you feel like a boy? Do you feel like a girl? How do you identify? Are you trapped in a different body? I mean, this stuff is outrageous. In California, there's a sex ed curriculum where it's teaching 6th graders, 7th graders, 8th graders, 9th graders, not just about transgenderism, not just about the quote unquote gender spectrum, but about bondage and anal sex. I mean, and when California was challenged about, these officials in California were challenged about why do 9th graders need to know about those two things from school, the California officials said that it was a civil rights issue. And I'm like, what? Excuse me, how is bondage a civil rights issue? This is indoctrination intended to break apart the traditional sexual relationship, which is marriage, right? Between a man and a woman, because the government, these radical leftists who control the government, don't want people to be relying on their families and on their spouses. They want people dependent and reliant on government, on them, the government officials. So my thoughts on the current state of sex education are, yeah, it's uncomfortable to talk about. Nobody wants to talk about very graphic sexual things. And so you might feel embarrassed about it. You might not want to speak up about it, but it's critically important that we do and that we push back on it, because the vast majority of parents agree with us, regardless of whether they're conservative or liberal, Christian or not. They agree with us that they don't want their children taught this kind of nonsense, this kind of graphic sex ed. They just need a leader to speak up first, and then they will say, yeah, I'm with you. I don't want my child taught this. And we need to, for the good of our country, to speak up. Okay. Next question is from Gerald. Gerald says, as an overseas fan of yours from Singapore, oh, cool, Gerald, hi. How confident are you that conservative, pro-American values will resonate and make a tangible impact all over the globe and not just in your country? Very interesting. So I can answer this non-hypothetically. Hypothetically, I could say, well, when freedom rings, other people are inspired. Where there's, prosperity, other people are not just envious, but they desire that, and they look for how it's done. That's the hypothetical answer, right? And it's true. I don't think it's untrue. But the practical answer is we can look at history. We can look at the actual practical things that have happened over the last 100 years around the world to see how pro-American values, whether it's free market, whether it's individual liberty, whether it's the rights of the people to self-govern, have impacted the world. And this is what I mean. Look at the poverty rate around the world, right? When did the poverty rate in other countries, not just the United States, when did the poverty rate begin to change? The poverty rate began to change during the Industrial Revolution. Who sparked the Industrial Revolution? Well, the United States did, because of our innovation, because of our free market. And because of that, the poverty rate around the world has been nearly obliterated. Yes, there are still people in poverty, but the actual rate has fallen so astronomically thanks to pro-American values here in the United States that have been exported to countries all around the world. So it's not just hypothetical when we say American freedom is critical to the well-being of people all around the globe. We have practical proof of that very thing happening, which should encourage us even more to try to export our freedom around the world by showing an example of what it does for our families and our communities and our country. Okay, next question from Dragon. That is not your real name, Dragon Pullman. Okay, Dragon. Dragon asks, have you ever met anyone recently who you think could be a star in the conservative movement? What is your opinion on pop music from the year you were born? And what do you think is the most enjoyable and rewarding thing about your faith? That's 3 questions, Dragon. Question number 1. Have you ever met anyone recently who you think could be a star? I don't believe in stardom in the sense that I don't think we should put anybody, whether it's a commentator, whether it's an elected official, whether it's a politician, what have you, I don't think we should put that type of person on a pedestal, because we're all human. Politicians are inherently flawed, and given money and power, their flaws are more likely to come to fruition. They're more likely to manifest. So I think it's actually kind of dangerous to look at people in politics, like I said, whether it's a commentator, whether it's a politician, as stars. We should look at them as fellow warriors in the conservative movement who are fighting for our country. We should join together with them when they are making an effort and using their platform to further the values that we share. But I hesitate to ever say like, oh, this person's going to be big, because I think we've had unfortunate examples of people who have risen to fame and stardom too quickly, who aren't very grounded in their conservative principles, and have ultimately either caved under pressure or simply, resorted to being bombastic to get attention. And I don't think that helps the conservative movement. So I know that's a boring answer. You would have rather me list a list of names, but that's my honest opinion. Okay, pop music from the year I was born. I probably couldn't even name one pop song from the year I was born. So sorry about that. Not cool about pop music. I'm not. What is the most enjoyable and rewarding thing about your faith? So, interesting. I'm not sure the point of faith is to be enjoyable, right? The point of faith is not really about us. The point of faith is to worship Jesus Christ if you're Christian, and to strive to be a light of Christ to others, because the goal of Christianity, right, is worshiping and to live in eternity with Jesus Christ. So I'm not sure that the point is enjoyable. So I'd have to give that some thought and see what I think. I do find it rewarding to know that Jesus Christ created me, that God created me in his image, that he created me with a plan for my life that no one else can fulfill except me, that he has a purpose for me. He has specific ways that he wants me to be the light of Christ to others, and that he will never forsake me. He will never leave me. He will never I will never be alone, because he will always be with me through hardship, through good times and bad, sickness and in health, right? That's how marriage vows were created, because it's emulating the love of Jesus Christ for us, right? So I find that to be the most rewarding part. It's also the most challenging part, to keep the faith during the hard times, to make sure that you're orienting your life to shining that light of Christ, and to keep your eyes on heaven and not of things of this world. But I think that's the most rewarding part, that he made me specifically who I am and how I am, because he wanted to use me to further his kingdom of God. That's a pretty powerful thing. It's a pretty humbling thing to sit there and think about. It's true of me, and it's also true of you. Okay, Ed is next in line. Ed's question: what do you think about the Washington state governor requiring churches to provide special vax-only seating? Oh, Ed, what a great question. This angers me beyond belief. I mean, where on earth does this end? Imagine for a second. Imagine if a politician said, hi, welcome to this arena. This is a place over here for people who have STDs, and this is a place for people who don't have STDs. This is a place for people who've had abortions, and this is a place for people who haven't had abortions. This is a place for people who've had vaccines, and this is a place for people who haven't had vaccines. Imagine, I mean, where does this end? Where does this end? How intrusive is government going to be, categorizing us and grouping us by our private medical decisions? I mean, this is unbelievable. And then on top of that, to add in the fact that this is a church, that you're going to have to go to exercise your religious liberty to worship the God you choose with a community of fellow believers, that you're going to be grouped based on whether you took part in a medical experiment, whether you took this vaccine, which, by the way, if you want to, go for it. I don't care. But you should have the right to say no without being stigmatized. That's basically like painting a red A on your forehead. It's horrifying, horrifying. And the only reason politicians get away with this stuff is because we, the people, let them, because we don't speak up loud enough, because we let them get away with this vote without voting them out of office when they abuse their power. I mean, remember, when politicians make these decisions, it's because we put them in office. We've chosen these people as representatives for our self-governance. If they're doing things that violate our right, we should kick them out of office, have a recall effort, vote them out, run against them, speak up out about how terrible this stuff is. And if they're getting away with it, it's because we're not pushing back against them strongly enough. Okay, that's how I feel about that. So thank you for triggering me on that. Okay, Miles. Oh, his username is Saint Miles. That's bold, Miles. Okay, Miles, you ask, with all the political reviewers and commentators online on what is or will be a good Republican candidate, and he says, which I have gone through both right, middle, and left, which group do you review for really deep coverage of a candidate, ones that pull no punches. I have zero trust in the mainstream media, but I also don't want to be too far right. Okay, so Miles, my simple answer to this is if there's literally no one that you trust for analysis, then you need to be doing the research yourself. So if there's no one that you can, if there's no source, meaning if there's no article, if there's no commentator, if there's no media outlet, no write-up that you trust to give you an accurate picture of a political candidate, then you need to look at their voting record yourself. You need to go and you need to ask them the questions yourself. You need to look at their words yourself instead of relying on someone else to summarize what that candidate believes and then draw the conclusion for you. You need to build it yourself. You need to say, okay, I see video of this person at their rally. I hear what they're saying. I look at their life history to see if they've lived up to their values. I look at their voting record if there's someone that's already in office. Does that make them a candidate that I believe has not only the principles, but the backbone to stand up for the principles once they are in a pressured environment, in Congress per se, or in state office? So if there's nobody that you trust, then do the research yourself. That's what I would say. You can also listen to me. I think I'm pretty trustworthy. Okay, next question. This question is from Paul. He says, my question is this. Why is the GOP going to even consider supporting a person who thinks they are a woman for governor of California? I don't care how conservative his fiscal policies are, if he is going to support the castration of people who are mentally ill. By the way, I think he still has a penis. Excuse the graphic detail. Paul, please. First of all, why are you thinking about Bruce's penis? I don't think that's good and true and lovely, is it? Okay, so in all seriousness, that one made me laugh, and I did challenge you guys to make me laugh, so there you go. Why are people considering supporting this person? Well, this is a tough one because on one hand, you have the lesser of two evils, right? And I think that's a legitimate tactic or legitimate thought process for just discerning who to vote for. You're not always looking for a candidate who's perfect, right? They don't have to necessarily pass a purity test. They just have to be more on your side than the other guy. Now, I know that's not ideal, but Caitlyn Jenner is more on our side than Gavin Newsom, right? So that would be the argument for supporting someone who clearly has outstanding issues with reality, right? So in that sense, I understand the hesitation, or I understand the feeling that you might want to support that person. That being said, I think it's also a matter of there aren't very many good, solid, principled conservatives who want to run for office. There's no one stepping up. Caitlyn stepped up, right? Now, I'm not saying that I support Caitlyn. I probably don't, but unless it comes down to Gavin versus Caitlyn, and then, yeah, of course, Caitlyn would be better than Gavin. But good, solid conservatives need to step up so that we don't have this sort of lose-lose choice, so that we have an option to vote for someone who's both principled and has the backbone to stick to their guns once they're in office. So I think that's why the Republican Party is even considering supporting Caitlyn, because it's either that or Gavin Newsom right now, unless the invitation is open. Conservatives, solid conservatives, run for governor in California, run for office, make yourself an option so that we don't have this terrible option. That is what. Oh, and by the way, I'm pretty sure that Caitlyn Jenner mentioned in the last chapter of her book, whatever you want to call it, whether the surgery had taken place. Just saying. I'm pretty sure that that's in the last chapter of the book. Okay. Jason asks, what else will be coming forward on Biden's agenda to further insult the sensibilities of average Americans and patriots? Jason, everything that you can think of. It's a socialist smorgasbord over there that is being levied at us. We're going to see efforts to restrict our Second Amendment rights. We're going to see efforts to restrict our free speech. We're going to see efforts to restrict our religious liberty. We're seeing assaults right now on conscience protections for medical providers. This actually just happened. Biden's HHS just this week changed a rule that defined sex as, man versus woman. They now define let me go back. The Trump administration defined sex as man and woman, so you can't discriminate against someone on the basis of their sex, right? The Biden administration, the HHS under Biden, this is Javier Becerra, right, and Rachel Levine, the transgender individual who is, I believe, a deputy undersecretary. They changed the definition of sex to include gender identity. So now medical providers and hospitals, even if they have religious objections to it, will be required to perform abortions or sex change surgeries, transgender surgeries, potentially even on children, or else face legal consequences for discrimination if they refuse or decline, right? So this is a really, really serious assault that we're seeing on Christians and on people who aren't even Christian, aren't even religious, just believe in science. Imagine having to leave the medical field because your choice was perform an abortion or be sued. You know, you have to choose between the law and your conscience, the law and your religion. I mean, this is a horrible situation that the Biden administration is putting medical providers all across the country in. And I think the express purpose of that is to ostracize Christians from the medical field. And that's a really serious thing if they're trying to ostracize Christians from any professional field. So that I think is one of the most serious assaults that's currently taking place, to insult the sensibilities of average Americans and patriots, to use your phraseology. Okay, next question from Tipping Points. Nice username. My book title, by the way. Okay, Tipping Points asks, do you believe that accepting Jesus Christ is the only way to get to heaven? No, I don't. And before Protestant heads explode, just listen to my logic for 1 second. What about my unborn baby who I miscarried, who died in my womb? Is that baby in heaven? Or is that baby not in heaven because that baby didn't have the capacity to accept Jesus Christ consciously? What about people who are seriously mentally disabled? Are they automatically condemned to hell because they don't have the capacity to accept Jesus Christ? I don't think so. There are exceptions to this. Of course, for individuals who have the capacity to accept Jesus Christ, that is the way to get to heaven. We know that from the Bible. But I think that there are exceptions to this, and I think that it's biblical. There are biblical exceptions to this as well. Little children who can't speak yet. If they die, do they automatically not go to heaven because they didn't have the capacity to consciously accept Jesus Christ? I don't believe that, and I don't think that the Bible teaches that that's the case. So the only way to get to heaven is accepting Jesus Christ? I don't think so, because I think that there are exceptions to that. But if you disagree, tell me, please. Get on Locals and post. Tell me why you disagree. Okay, Tipping Points also has a second question about religion. Why Catholicism and not Christianity? Catholicism is the original Christianity. Catholicism is Christianity. Catholicism is the faith Jesus Christ passed down to his disciples, who passed it down to his followers. We are the Catholic Church. The Catholic faith is the lineage of Jesus Christ. So Catholicism, I know there are a lot of misconceptions about Catholicism, but Catholicism is Christianity. It's one and the same. All right. Let me do a quick refresh to get the rest of the questions, because everyone's been asking such great questions. You still have a couple minutes to submit if you want to. Let's see. Okay. Jason asks, what else can we expect from the Biden administration in the coming weeks and months? We've already seen huge attacks on the Second Amendment, outrageous federal spending, foreign vulnerabilities showing to our enemies, et cetera, et cetera. What are your thoughts? Honestly, Jason, I don't want to sound too pessimistic, but I think it's just going to get worse. I think that, President Biden and President Kamala Harris are radical leftists. I mean, they have a radical leftist agenda, and regardless of what Biden's history has been or his record has been, he surrounded himself with really, really far left people who want the destruction of the institutions that have made America the great nation that we are. And we are going to see a continued assault on those institutions unless we don't allow it, unless we speak out against it, unless we vote these people out of office. So you're going to see the family assaulted. You're going to see your rights left and right assaulted. You're going to see America delegitimized. You're going to see, critical race theory and radical sex ed and the 1619 Project and education co-opted and anti-science because of COVID and communism and socialism packaged as, women's rights and all kinds of nasty, nasty stuff that we as conservatives have to unpack so that we can wait out this administration and vote a Republican in office in 2024. Let's see. Let's look for other questions here. We're almost... So many great questions. I really appreciate you guys all taking part in this. Okay, Drew asks, how did we get here where Democrats run most of the country? Drew, that is a misconception. Democrats do not run most of the country. In fact, in many, many state houses across the nation, at the state level, Republicans are in control, Republican governors and Republican legislatures. This is one of the problems with, as I mentioned earlier in the question and answer, this is one of the problems with putting politicians on the federal level on a pedestal, is we actually get obsessed with politicians at the federal level. We get obsessed with the presidency, obsessed with, a senator, obsessed with the House of Representatives, when really a lot of stuff happens at the state level. A lot of our rights are both protected and violated at the state level. And at the state level, conservatives are winning. I mean, if you look at just the pro-life movement, for example, this year alone, over 500 pro-life bills have been introduced in state legislatures across the country. 61 pro-life pro-life bills have actually become law, been signed into law by the state governors. So how did we get here where Democrats run most of the country? That's not actually true. Democrats are in control of the White House and the Senate and the House of Representatives right now. Yes, that's not good. I'm not trying to belittle that or minimize that. We need to vote to change that. But at the state level, Republicans are doing a lot of good things. So don't lose sight of that and don't lose hope. Okay. We have favorite song at the moment. Oh, you know what song is my baby's favorite song right now? If she's crying or if she's hungry, she likes me to sing Amazing Grace to her. So I would say that's so sweet that she likes that song. She'll stop crying and actually smile up at me if I sing Amazing Grace to her. And that melts my heart. So that's my favorite song. Oh, this is a good question. Will you be posting more bloopers? That I will leave to my producer, but I have a feeling the answer to that is yeah. Stay tuned, because especially this week, they were laughing at me a lot for things that I was saying. So stay tuned. That'll be posted on Locals. All right, I think that is all of the questions. Guys, if you want to ask a question, we're going to be doing this frequently. If you want to ask a question the next time, please become a supporter. Be part of the Liz Wheeler community on Locals. You'll get VIP access to me. You'll get exclusive content. You'll get all kinds of fun stuff happens over there. So go to joinlizwheeler.com/locals. Locals is really the answer to big tech censorship. I mean, you know that I've been demonetized on Facebook. You know that I get quote unquote fact checked on Instagram all the time and on Facebook as well by these fake fact checkers. Locals is the answer to that because there's no censorship. I can say whatever I want without fearing that I'm going to, get banned, that I'm going to get demonetized. It's where we go to have these conversations that we should be able to have on the other social media platforms, but we no longer can because of the far left agenda of Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all the rest of them. So please join us. We have fun over there. Joinlizwheeler.com/locals. We'll see you over there. Hopefully very, very soon. And thank you all for being here. I love talking to you guys. Talk soon.